Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Crewcasts, an all-new podcast series brought to you by the Sacred Heart Grade 11, Grade 12 drama class. I'm your host, Kennedy, and today we'll be hearing from several students about a topic I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with: family. From crazy grandparents to important traditions to long-lost relatives, stick around to hear what our students have to say about their families and the way they have influenced their outlook on life. Up first, we have Aleeza, who will be discussing her family history and the struggles they overcame to end up where they are today, with her podcast, What Makes a Family?
Growing up, many people questioned the size of my family. No one could believe the fact that my family actually takes up about a quarter of a street. They questioned the fact that we live in 6 houses, all rowed up side by side in a small suburban neighborhood in a town called Newmarket. But that's the truth. 6 houses, all rowed up side by side, and I never once felt weird about it. Growing up, to me, this is what a normal family looked like. They were the ones who saw me take my first steps and watched over me at the park. They were the ones who taught me how to read and write and interact with others, and not once did I feel like my family was any different than anyone else's around me. But that was until others started to ask me about it, until people started to question my family's closeness, as if it was abnormal or even absurd to have that kind of relationship with them. As a young girl, growing up in a family dynamic completely different than those around me, I became curious, and I specifically remember asking my parents why we all lived like this, side by side like a little village.
Because we are a family and we love each other.
I already knew that though. I wasn't going to settle for that as an answer. No, Mama, you know what I mean. We don't need each other to live, right? We'd be just fine by ourselves.
You may think you're fine, but you're not. We need each other more than you think. We are so close now because at one point in our lives, all we had was each other.
And that's when it hit me. Memories of all those stories that my grandma used to tell me and my cousins when we were growing up flooded into my mind, and it all finally started to make sense. My grandma always used to say to us,
सोना जो है ना कहते हैं उसको कुंदन में डालो वो उसको आग में डालो तो वो कुंदन बन जाता है.
Meaning, only when someone puts gold into a hot blazing fire can it be made into precious and beautiful jewelry.
I could see it all clearly now, and I felt stupid for not being able to see it before. My family and my grandmother's struggle was that blazing fire, and our little village now is our beautiful piece of jewelry. Our grandma always used to tell us stories about her life before she immigrated to Canada. She would tell us about how young she was when she got married. She told us how she left her huge family in Pakistan and moved all the way to a country in Africa called Tanzania, where she had most of her 7 children.
ठीक है फिर उसके बाद
We lived in Tanzania for about 10 years. Then, due to your grandfather's circumstances, we couldn't live in Tanzania anymore. So we moved to Nairobi, where we lived for about another 10 years. We lived in Nairobi as refugees for all those years, and that time in our lives was a really big struggle for us. We were all alone. I didn't even have all my children with me. Some had to stay back in Tanzania. My mama had told me about her life in Africa and how amazing it all used to be. She used to love the weather and loved the fact that they grew up with so many different types of animals and wildlife. You could see the passion grow in her eyes when she would talk about how her and my aunt used to love to play the game of field hockey, and how they were so crazy about it that they'd come home filled with bruises and scratches all over their elbows, knees, and ankles from playing it all day in the scorching hot sun.
घर था, बिजनेस था अपना, समझते फाइनेंशियली हम बहुत हाथ बात की आसानी थी।
In Tanzania, we had our own business, we had our own house, and even our own car. Financially, we didn't have to worry about anything. But living as refugees in Nairobi, we struggled because we went from having all those things to not having a house of our own, or a job of our own, or any friends, or a phone, or radio, or even TV. Not that there were many TVs at that time anyway. We had no sense of enjoyment though, and we became very lost. It was also really hard for me to put myself out there and make new friends. We didn't know anybody. There even came a time where your grandfather wasn't with us, which made things even harder. My grandmother and her children, our parents, went from lavish living to not even being able to fend for themselves. Living in Nairobi took a toll on my relationship with your grandfather. A time came where our relationship was not so good. I decided that I was going back to Tanzania with my kids. Then my oldest son found out a way to go to England, and at that time my kids were really upset. I remember my two older girls were really worried, and they would say to him, "Stay and keep the family safe, and help keep father calm and controlled." But I knew, and I thought that if my son stays here, his life would be ruined, and at least in England he would have a better future and a chance. But my oldest son saw our struggle and knew our circumstances, so he tried to do his very best to help us out. After a lot of digging, he found out that 3 of my children were British citizens because their father was a British citizen at the time of their birth. This was a really good thing because it meant that they could go and live in England. This part of the story always scared me. It gave me goosebumps to think how much power one decision has. If my grandmother had asked my uncle to stay back with them in Nairobi, they would have never been able to live in Canada and be as successful as they are now. Heck, I probably wouldn't even be here. But with the grace of God, everything after that moment was smooth sails. My uncle moved to Canada, where he sponsored my grandmother and his baby brother, aka my youngest uncle Jimmy. And together, they all sponsored the rest of their family to come over and live the future they deserve in the amazing nation of Canada. When someone is so invested in their own world and has everything they can possibly dream of, they become arrogant. But when we were going through our hard times, when we had nothing and we were nothing, we only had each other. And because of that, we are so united now. This bond that we have in our family is irreplaceable.
And that's it. That was the answer I was looking for. I had finally found it. This life now, the life that my family is able to live. This little village of ours, 6 houses, all rowed up, side by side, that they've created in this Western country. All these blessings and all these jewels is a product of that blazing fire and struggle they all went through. For us.
Thank you, Aleeza, for sharing such a moving story. Our family and our history becomes an integral part of who we are and what we value. Our next podcast will be touching on that more in depth, as Emma and Julianna will be discussing their family traditions that they hold near and dear to their hearts. Without further ado, here is E&J Family Traditions.
Sogno all'orizzonte, mancano le parole. Sì, lo so che non c'è luce in una stanza quando manca il sole. Se non ci sei tu con me.
Hi, my name is Julianna, and I grew up in an Italian household. As many of you may know, Italian people are very loud and outgoing. We like to party and be around a lot of family. We are known for our pasta, tomato sauce, wine, and espresso. Me and my family have carried on many traditions from my grandparents and great-grandparents. Some of them include homemade tomato sauce, Sunday dinners at nonna's, Easter and Christmas gatherings, and many more. On the other hand, we have Emma, who grew up in a European household.
Hi, my name's Emma, and I grew up in a European household. My dad is Italian, and the things that Julianna said I 100% agree with, because a lot of the traditions are the same. Especially going to nonna's on Sunday for dinner, I love that. On the other hand, my mom is German, and many of the traditions that my family celebrate were more German than Italian. Some traditions that we did were St. Nicholas in December, and on Christmas we would have a big German meal and reminisce about the past, like our great-grandparents and what my parents and my uncle did when they were younger. Speaking of traditions, Julianna, what is your favorite Italian tradition?
Well, I'd have to say, being together as a whole family on Christmas and Easter. My family, Nonna, and all my cousins with their families get together and enjoy a feast. We share laughs, memories, and most of all, love. We also exchange gifts on Christmas, and usually each family brings their own share of the meal or dessert. Over the years, my mom has told me many stories that we have carried on through the generations, and this story she's about to talk about gives an overview of what she grew up with and what I will carry on in the future.
Growing up was a very interesting, family-oriented lifestyle. From very young age, as an Italian, family always comes first. Traditions ranged from Sunday dinners every Sunday at either your nonna's house or your own house with your parents. Continued well into teenage years, which is a tradition I hope to have my own children continue and do with their own families, and have Sunday dinner with us, potentially their future grandchildren. And it also ranged from making a homemade tomato sauce every September long weekend. We also did homemade sausage, which would be done in January. And again, all events that were with huge amounts of people, everybody helping each other out, always family helping and willing to participate. Then other traditions were Christmas, always big events, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, non-stop partying. Actually, celebration, part of the tradition is also visiting before Christmas, making your rounds to everyone for what we would call a Christmas drink or Christmas, wishing good Christmas cheer. And it wasn't just Christmas. Easter is also very big in the Italian culture, very important Catholic holiday, another time for major celebration and family gatherings, again, a weekend event. And basically, it was a pleasure to be raised that way, and I hope that I can carry these traditions forward with my own children, and that they will continue with these traditions.
This is definitely a story and memory that I will carry on in the future, and hopefully to one day have a family and children to whom I can teach the language to and cherish all the memories with.
Wow, that was a great story. And having some of the same traditions as half Italian, I can agree with passing down some of the traditions to future generations. One of my favorite German traditions is to celebrate St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas is like Santa Claus, but in Germany he comes on December 6th. As a child, I loved St. Nicholas and always counted down the days till he came. My mom told me many stories about how she celebrated with her great-grandparents and my grandparents. Here's my mom telling a story about when she was a kid and celebrated St. Nicholas.
Being brought up in a German family, we had lots of traditions. One tradition that I do remember is St. Nicholas. Every December 6th, we would go to my grandparents' house, and my parents would be there, and we would be celebrating St. Nicholas, and we would have a nice German dinner. And towards the evening, we would have a gentleman, which was the next door neighbor, I didn't know that, come and bang at the door. And when he left, there was 2 sacks for my brother and myself, in which we opened with my grandparents. And my grandparents then told me a story for when they were growing up in Germany. They also had St. Nicholas, and this gentleman had a very long beard, and he would go around to all the poor people's houses and deliver nuts and fruit and a little gift for the little boy or girl. When they came here from Germany and they came here to Canada, they started doing the traditions with my brother and myself, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm really glad that they've passed it on, because now my parents do it for my children. And when my children have their children, I would love to pass it down as well. One thing that I do remember as a child, before St. Nicholas would bang on the door, I'd be sitting with my grandfather at the table, just anticipating this big noise at the door, that he would be coming to drop off goodies for my brother and myself. And as an adult now, my husband used to go outside and bang on the door when the kids were upstairs with me, and they got all nervous too. But once we opened up the door and we saw, my husband used to put the shoe prints in the snow, if it was snowing at that point, and they would be so excited because they would know that St. Nicholas came to the door. Therefore, my parents were the ones that were doing the sacks at the time, and they would deliver them before December 6th to the house without the children knowing. And I hope one day that I can do that as well, for my children's children.
St. Nicholas brought me a lot of joy when I was a young kid. When you reach the age of 12, St. Nicholas stops and he writes you a letter saying that he's grateful that he was able to bring you so much joy throughout the years. But my grandparents always give my cousins, my sister, and I little gifts from him just to say Merry Christmas. This tradition is one of many traditions that my parents will carry on to my kids, and then I will pass it on to my kids and future generations.
It was insightful to learn more about the German culture and traditions. This is only 2 cultures out of millions, and I can't even imagine the different traditions other cultures have.
Thank you, Emma and Julianna. I loved hearing your different perspectives and the various traditions that your different cultures celebrate. Up next, we have Alyssa, who will be sharing stories about her grandfather and his life in the Philippines in her podcast, Papa.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you.
The beautiful singing you heard just now was done by a man called Rhett Abarquez. Some people know him as the Great R.A., and other people know him as the Filipino Elvis. I call him my papa. Papa to a lot of people would mean dad, but to me, it's my grandfather. A lot of Filipino grandparents go by Lolo for grandfather and Lola for grandmother. I did call my grandmother Lola, and sadly she's passed away, but I call my grandfather Papa. That's because, me and my 6 cousins, all of our moms, called their grandpa Papa, and my grandpa called his grandpa Papa, and, tradition. His real name is Rhett, except, I guess it's not really his real name. I don't know if this is just my family or a lot of Filipinos, but there's a thing about nicknames. Like, one of my distant cousins that I see all the time didn't know my mom's name wasn't Pokey until a couple years ago. The name my papa was born with was Adriatico, and his 2 brothers are named Atlantico and Antarctico, and they were named by their dad Pacifico, and they all have sea-related names because Pacifico was a sea captain in the Philippines. My papa was actually born in the Philippines, specifically raised in Cebu, and he immigrated to Canada in the 60s so that he could have a safer environment for his family, where my mom and her 3 sisters were born. He went through a lot of different struggles in the process of coming to Canada, and I really admire him because I, as the youngest of my family, know him only to be the happy, uplifting man that I admire. And so knowing that he's gone through so much, it makes me love him even more. I should probably mention that I am extremely white. Well, that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's entirely true. My mom's Filipino and she looks Filipina, but my dad's white, and I was born with pale skin and blue eyes and very blonde hair. And although I look a bit different now, almost brown hair and pretty much gray eyes, I'm the palest in my whole family. And so it's a bit interesting when we go on family trips, which we do a lot of actually. Anytime we go to a border, it's hard for people to believe that I am the granddaughter of an entirely Filipino-looking man that is my papa. Even my cousins look darker than me, and my brother too. It's been a bit of a problem over the years. Let's just say that. Just about a year ago, in February, right before the pandemic hit, my papa took me and 4 of my other cousins to the Philippines for a little family trip. We only went for about a week, which I must say is not nearly enough time for relaxing and actually having fun, but it was a nice trip nonetheless. We went to Manila for a couple days, and then we flew to Cebu, and then we took a ferry to an island that a lot of my papa's distant family lives on, and that's called Camotes. And let me just say, if I could live there forever, I would. The sunrises and sunsets were some of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. The beaches were lovely, and just seeing the people in the community just made me so happy. My cousins and me sat in the back of an old truck that my distant cousin drove us around in. Anytime we passed by a kid walking to or from school, they would be confused by the truck full of mixed kids and the really pale girl with colorful hair. But we would wave to them and they would wave back, and it was the cutest thing you could see. We ate delicious food. We swam in an underground cave. We met new family, and we heard lots and lots of stories. Not only in Camotes, but in the whole trip, we heard so many stories of Papa. A new favorite story of mine is from when my Papa was still living in the Philippines, and I believe he was in college or university at the time. He was still only dating my Lola, but she lived on another island far away, and so if he wanted to go see her, he had to take a plane. But for reasons I don't remember, his mom didn't want him doing that. So every weekend, he would tell his mom, I'm going to take a ferry to visit some distant relatives in Manila, I believe. And instead of taking the ferry that he promised his mom he would take, he would turn around and get on a plane and visit my Lola. So this would happen every weekend. He would pretend he was taking a ferry to Manila, and he would get on a plane every single weekend and visit my Lola, because he's such a gentleman. And one time, his mom decided that she was going to drive him. So she drove him to the ferry, and she kept watching him, and so he walked onto the ferry. And she just watched him until he left on the ferry. He took the ferry all the way to Manila, only to get on a plane and then be late when going to see my Lola. So that's one of my favorite news stories of my papa. It might not even be entertaining to you. Actually, it's probably not, but I love it because it's about my papa. Actually, when I think about it now, almost all of my favorite family stories are about my papa, and that's because I just love him so much. When we went to Cebu and we visited my papa's childhood home and his neighborhood, and we passed by his school, I felt in a way honored to be able to just see where he came from, because I've been lucky enough to feel a genuine connection to my family, and without that community that my papa grew up in, nothing in my life would be the way that it is. I probably wouldn't even be here. And from stories, I probably only know about 2% of everything that happened in my papa's childhood, but I'm just happy that everything has turned out the ways that it has, because I love my life and I love my papa. I need to remember to appreciate my papa more for the amazing person that he is, because even though he would say that he's gonna live forever, I know for a fact that one day I'm going to wake up and realize that I'm never going to hear anew one of my papa's crazy stories. And as sad as that is, it just reminds me to appreciate everything that I have and to show the people that I love them.
Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you, for I can't help falling in love with you.
Thanks, Alyssa, for sharing some lovely stories about your grandfather. It's interesting to dissect how the lives of our grandparents or great-grandparents or even great-great-grandparents have shaped us in ways we could have never imagined. In a similar vein, our next podcast will discuss how we can connect to our grandparents or the older generations in unique ways, specifically through music. Here's Mia with Musical Podcasts.
Hi, my name is Mia Landsberg, and this is Daily Podcasts for You. Today, we're going to be talking about how music can connect generations. When I was younger, my grandmother used to sing me lullabies like Hush Little Baby, Itsy Bitsy Spider, and Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Since she sung those songs to me as I was a kid, when I'm having children, I'm going to continue those songs and sing those exact ones to my children. I'll be able to tell them about how my grandmother sang me those songs when I was little. Thus, I'm connecting the generations, the future generations, through the music that I've heard when I was a child. Music is a great tool to connect the generations and help young children know about their history, heritage, and background. By sharing simple songs and stories, it helps children know that they have like a special place or memory of their family connected to the song, and they'll have this forever. No matter how old they are or how old they get, they will have this memory forever. When I asked my grandmother, Terry Landsberg, why she likes to share her music with her family, this is what she said.
Because I want them to enjoy what I used to listen to as a young child, and maybe people would, catch on to them, because I know Yupil's music is different from what we used to listen to at the time when we were so young. Well, your grandfather used to sing a lot, so he used to sing a lot of songs that I listen to nowadays because it reminds me of him. And hopefully one day also, it will remind you, when I'm dead and gone, it will remind you of me. Oh, this is Granny's song. She used to like this song. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's about, passed on from generation to generation, my child.
Everything that she said is correct. We share music because it helps us bond with other people. Music plays such a significant role in strengthening the bonds that we have with others. It helps impact our ability to connect with one another through our empathy, trust, and cooperations we have with each other. Music gives us potential to connect with other people and to use this music to bring us together. And when our grandmother or mother or anyone in our family or anybody we know will play a song and we hear it, it's like we have that ultimate memory with that person of hearing that song for the first time. And the next time you'll hear the song, you'll be like, oh, I remember that song. I remember that I was in my grandmother's room and she played me the Build Me a Buttercup song, and I don't think I've ever heard it before, or I think I heard it maybe once or twice, but I have that memory because right after she played it, we all started singing it. So my grandmother, me, and my grandfather started singing it all together in a room, and that's the memory that I have connected to that song. How I felt that we were all bonding over that one song and over singing the song together. It helped us connect with each other and just kind of create this like cooperation with one another and have like an ability to connect with each other through through the music and through the words that they were saying. Now we're going to talk about what music really means to people. Music is a way that people are able to express how they're feeling without really saying how they're feeling. When I listen to music, I particularly listen to songs that I feel like are saying something that I really can't quite say into words. I really can't talk to someone about this, but somehow I'll find the ease and express my feelings through the music and what they're saying and how the music makes me feel. And music helps connect people because songs have messages that people are able to relate to or agree with. That's why people have like their favorite songs, for example, or songs that they'll like or songs that they'll listen to all the time. I know me, for example, I can listen to the same song like 500 times over and over again. Only if I can connect to it or if I like it or if it has a memory with that song. And I'm able to relate to the song on a personal level. When I asked my grandmother what music means to her and why it's important, this is what she said.
Oh, it makes me happy. I just feel very happy just listening to music. It's like poetry as well. You listen to poetry, it just puts you in a beautiful mood.
Yes.
You know? Well, the music, the words, what it reminds me of when I listened to it, say when I was 13 years old, a teenager.
Yeah.
Just takes me back in time to all the good memories that I had. As I say, the thing that it does is just makes me happy, to know that at one stage in my life I was much younger listening, and it's just, as I said, bringing back memories for me. It's always been important. I lived in a household with music continuously. Your grandmother loved listening to your great-grandmother, I should say, and your great-grandfather. We lived in a house full of music. That's why I love music, because it just takes, as I say, memories of years gone by.
That's good. You pass it on, because that memory will be for you will probably be something different than what the memory will be for me. If you show me a song that has a memory of your mother or something, and then you show it to me, then I'll have the memory of you. So it's passing on through everybody, but we all have different memories.
Generations. It's true.
Now we're going to talk about the impact that sharing our music with our family really has. Music helps break boundaries between different people from different backgrounds and different heritage. No matter where anybody's from, everybody still knows Christmas carols, Christmas songs. They could be in a different language. They could just be in English. They could just be the same one. But everybody knows the Christmas songs. Everybody sings the carols, sings the Christmas carols. Even if two people find that they have nothing in common, they can still both relate with each other through music. Say they're listening to the same song. They may not have anything in common, but they could have similar music taste. They could like the same song, and it's because they connect to the message that is within the song. In every song there's a message. Some may be easier to point out than others, but every song has a message that's trying to talk about it within it. This can be things from losing someone important to your life. The song may be a little bit more slow, a little bit more serious, or getting cheated on. It could be about being getting revenge, or things that you wanted to do and how you feel when you're getting cheated on, or even falling in love, being so happy and being with this person and just being the happiest that you've ever been and being so grateful for this person. All of these are examples of things that have happened to everyone in their life. Everyone can relate to losing someone, maybe not getting cheated on, but maybe a breakup, or getting cheated on, or falling in love. These topics let people relate and connect to what the singer or what the person in the song or story is saying. When I asked my grandmother, why do you think we need music in our lives, and if she connects a memory to music, certain songs, this is what she said.
I think music makes your life different. If you don't have music, how sullen would it? Life will be very sullen.
Yeah.
It won't be happy. I mean, when you were little, I used to read nursery rhymes for you guys. For you and Ava, and you loved the nursery rhymes. So, and I mean, a lot of the times I used to sing it to you.
Mhm.
So I think it gives you a happy feeling, when you're listening to somebody singing to you.
Yeah. Would you say like expressive? Like it helps you express like your.
Oh yes, that's a beautiful word.
That's
yes,
the word.
It does express. Yes, it does express. It's very expressive because music's the words, everything about it is just good. You know, every song that you listen to. Say if I send you a song, say a year from now, the year before, and you listen to it again, you'll say, "Hey, that's the same song my grandmother used to sent me." You know.
Okay, now bringing everything into consideration, music is something that we all really need in our lives. Music is important to every single human being. It's super important in my life, and music is known as the universal language. It's capable of awakening emotions within people that sometimes they don't know that they have, they don't acknowledge that they have in them, but it just awakens like these emotions or these feelings that you're hiding deep down, and it allows you to express them in a way that's not talking, not really looking at somebody, but through music and through the way that it makes you feel. And sometimes if we're listening to someone sing, despite if it's in like another language or if we're able to understand what they're saying, we're able to still hear the emotion in their voice. I know that when I'm sad, I listen to more upbeat music, more like rock music, because it allows me to get my anger out. When I'm mad, that's what I listen to. And when I'm sad, I'll listen to either pop, rock, or I'll listen to slow songs, but I just try and get my emotions and my anger, and I feel like I'm able to relate to a song through that, and it helps me kind of say what I can't quite say and what I don't want to say and what I'm feeling inside but don't really know how to express fully. I would like to thank my grandmother, Terry Landsberg, for joining us on this podcast today, and thank you for listening, everybody out there. This is Daily Podcast for you, and you can join us tomorrow where we're going to talk about the different types of fashion trends throughout the years.
Thank you, Mia. I wholeheartedly agree. Music is such a powerful tool that we can use to express ourselves and communicate with those around us. Our final podcast today tells the story of Cassie's investigation into a potentially long-lost relative who fought in World War II. Here is a family mystery.
Have you ever thought about your family history? And I'm talking about people before your grandparents and even great-grandparents. People in your family that have lived long before you. Have you ever been curious about where they've been and came from? No? Same here. Well, until about 2 years ago, that is. About 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Italy and France for D-Day's 75th anniversary. We were given an assignment to look up people at the Casino War Cemetery. As I was scrolling through the names, I came across someone with my last name, Chapman. So of course I clicked on the name to learn more about this mysterious man. We were told to go on Ancestry to learn more about the soldier we chose. So I searched up his name, John J. Chapman. He was a private in World War II. His regiment was Hastings and Prince Edward. RCIC, service number C6126. He died at 24. He had a wife, Marguerite, and 2 kids, John and Marguerite. It's almost impossible to imagine how they felt when he died. Honestly, I don't even know if he's related to me. But from what I've heard from my grandma, is that where his regiment was, it's fairly close to where my dad's whole side of the family lives. So it's a major possibility. The day came when I finally got to see John's grave. It was both amazing and emotional. Part of that assignment was to look for their grave and possibly write a letter to them. When we arrived at the cemetery, I was excited to see his grave. I got to his grave and placed my letter in front of it, pinning my poppy on it. Dear John J. Chapman, I have the same last name. My family lives near your birthplace. Not sure if you knew my great-grandparents. My great-grandmother is still alive. Even though we never met, I think it's cool how we are somehow related. You may be a distant cousin. I'm hoping at some point we will see each other, and that is something I can't wait for. My family is one thing I love to learn about. You are the coolest person in my family among the other Chapmans in the war. This letter means a lot to me, and I know you'll see this and see me. This letter was an assignment, but this has become so much more. I respect you, and I'm very happy that you're a part of my family. After seeing the grave and going through the ceremony at the cemetery, we were off to Normandy. There, we would celebrate D-Day 75 at Juno Beach. When we first went to Juno Beach, we went to the museum. I ended up buying an empty bottle from the gift shop and filled it with sand from the beach. A few weeks later, after coming home, I put some sand in a small bottle for a necklace. That was a trip I will never forget. It brought me to the realization that possibly someone in my family fought in that war. Every now and then, I look back at the photos on that trip. The letter I wrote makes me emotional. I didn't even remember what I wrote on the letter. So reading it again after 2 years was amazing. Now that I know that possibly someone in my family was in World War II, brings a different meaning for D-Day, and an even greater appreciation for those of World War II. Now every day when D-Day comes, I want to do something that will help me remember and appreciate those that did fight in World War II. Maybe do some painting or even watching movies and documentaries based on World War II. I would like to find out if John J. Chapman is for sure part of my family. I can go about this in 3 ways. One is to just keep looking at files and other documents about him and his family, though that may seem a bit long. 2, I could use Ancestry.ca to make my family tree and continue adding family members until around the time he died or was born. Still seems a little long to me, though. Or 3, use a family book my grandma has. It is filled with every Chapman before me, and will be filled with every Chapman after me. Seems like the third option is the easiest out of all of them. Now it's just a matter of time before I actually find out if John is really in my family. But even if he doesn't turn out to be family, it doesn't bother me. I would still consider him as part of my family.
Thanks, Cassie, for sharing your story with us. This just goes to show how deeply family impacts our lives and our worldviews, even family we didn't know existed. Well, that's all for today's episode. I hope you were able to sit back, enjoy, and maybe even reflect on your own relationship with your family members. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we hope to have you back for our next episode, in which students will discuss the arts and the countless ways they influence and inspire us. Until next time, I'm your host, Kennedy, and this has been another episode of Crewcasts.